we've got to talk about what happened in the Timothy Busfield bail hearing yesterday, where he was granted bail and was not held in state custody pending his trial on charges of alleged child abuse, alleged child molestation. 2 little boys, ages 7 at the time, 11 today, alleged twin brothers, alleged that he molested them, that he fondled one outside of his clothing, and that with the other one, it was less of a fondling, more of like inappropriate touching, but one explicitly having his private genitalia touched, he claims, by Timothy Busfield, who was the kid's director on this show, The House Cleaner, I think it was called. In any event, he's denied the charges. And then when the arrest warrant was issued for him on last Friday out of New Mexico, he took a total of 5 days. He didn't turn himself in Albuquerque, New Mexico until Tuesday. And now we know that he was driving cross country and he was working with a lawyer to take what they say is a legit polygraph that he says he passed, sit with a sexual assault evaluator to assess just how threatening he may or may not be to children, and issue a statement on camera to TMZ, which we've already addressed as having signs of deception, per Phil Houston, the human lie detector and CIA agent of 25 years who invented their deception detection methods. Now, we said at the time we had not heard his defense, and now we're getting a look at it because his lawyers came in both guns blazing to try to get him bail. And the most shocking allegation, pretty much everything they alleged in his defense, we kind of knew, but we did not know that the parents of the 2 boys are a couple of, as the defense lawyers, I'm sorry, adequately said, con men. The mother and the father both appear to be serial fraudsters, which, let's face it, changes the outlook of this case, changes the likely outcome, and changes how we need to view the allegations themselves. I'm going to give you guys just a little bit from the defendant's opposition to the state's motion to hold Busfield without bail. They say the dad he's a former attorney who was convicted of federal conspiracy and wire fraud and was later disbarred following the prosecution for a multi-million-dollar scheme in which he used his law license to deceive vulnerable victims for profit. He pleaded guilty, so there's no question he did it, to conspiracy to commit wire fraud arising from a mortgage modification enterprise that defrauded more than 1,500 homeowners of approximately $6 million. It happened, I believe, during COVID, where he was taking advantage of vulnerable people. This is as an officer of the court, where he has a duty to, be an extra duty to be ethical and honest. The children's mother, they write, has an equally disturbing history. She has had multiple civil judgments entered against her, and not just civil judgments like you had a car accident and you whatever, or like you punched somebody. It's judgments that relate to her honesty. So it's all like potential. It's all very relevant for fraudulent and dishonest behavior. She was sued in 2011 by somebody to whom she sold her Bentley for $91,000. The guy took possession of the Bentley, but she never transferred him the actual title. And then she had the vehicle unlawfully repossessed and then traded the Bentley in and got a Porsche instead, which she registered in her mother's name. Then a complaint came against her, and apparently they are alleging that there was a judgment against her. And then in addition, there were judgments against her for over $400,000 for unpaid gambling debts in which she allegedly wrote bad checks to MGM Grand and one other casino trying to pay for it, but the checks were bad. So, I mean, this is like, if all this is true, it's alleged by Busfield in his response. It was stated in court yesterday. The prosecutor did not take it on at all, saying it's not true, these are lies. So it's not a case of mistaken identity from the look of it. This is deeply problematic. Now, Dave, I'm going to start with you on this because, again, you're just coming off of years as a state prosecutor. So you would be, the guy saddled with this revelation of your 2 minor plaintiffs in a child sex abuse case. It's not like the children have been found guilty of fraud. I don't know that it even gets admitted, to be honest, right? Because it's like the whole defense is going to be the children were coached by the parents. The initial statements that they gave to an investigator were that they weren't molested. Then a year later, it changed to, yes, I was molested. And they're going to say that that's because of these con man parents. But Is it admissible when the parents are fraudsters and the children are alleging sex abuse?
I think, Megan, for the defense, they're going to lean into the motive here for the kids to lie at the behest of their parents, because there's also a report during the internal investigation that the mother was found to have said something to the effect of, if the twins did not get their contract renewed for the show, that she would get Timothy Busfield. And so,
Yeah, she was going to get her revenge on him.
right. So in that sense, her past and a history of fraud and shakedown schemes and things like that could be relevant here. So the judge is more lenient to allow the defense to pursue motive than they would to allow the prosecution to expose prior bad facts about the defense. So that's why I think that it could come in, because that's how you have a fair trial. You have to flush out whether there was a motive to lie, especially because these kids are minors. And they originally said to investigators that there was no inappropriate touching, and then later changed their story.
They played that on his defense lawyer played audio of the boys initially denying that Busfield had inappropriately touched them. Here it is in SOT 50.
And you know what's right and wrong, right? You know where people can't touch, where people can't do. Yeah, you know that, right? Does Tim ever do that?
No, he's never touched me.
Never touched you?
Yeah.
In like, you know, your private areas, right?
Yeah.
Never did that?
Never.
Okay.
Let's go on, Your Honor, to Defense Exhibit AA. This is 5 minutes later, separate. The boys were separated. The same police officer, this time speaking to SL, out of the presence of his brother.
So, you know what's right and wrong, right?
Yeah.
You know no one could touch your private areas?
Yeah, but he doesn't touch them.
Doesn't touch your private parts? Okay.
That's not, Your Honor, a failure to disclose. That's an express denial.
That's Busfield's defense attorney, Mike. But the problem there is, of course, that little kids who are molested often do an express denial when they're first asked about it. There's a lot of shame associated with it. So, I mean, that's not as probing as like a lay witness might think. Like it is very frequent that an abuse victim initially denies it. But the parent's background, as somebody who I think Timothy Busfield is a creep, an absolute creep. And we've learned he's even more creepy than we knew, because we learned about 2 other females who have come forward complaining about him at yesterday's hearing. But that doesn't necessarily mean he's a child molester. So we really do need to look at the credibility. I mean, yes, of the boys, but they're little ones, you know, but these parents, is it relevant?
Yes. I mean, I would say this. I've had friends who were sexually abused as kids, and it destroys them for the rest of their lives. There's nothing worse you can do than sexually abuse a kid. And I personally think you should bring back medieval punishment for the people who sexually abuse kids. I know the Supreme Court says we can't have the death penalty anymore for child rape. I think the Supreme Court should reverse that now that Justice Kennedy's no longer on the Supreme Court. I think these people should be brutally and publicly executed, to people who abuse kids. But we also have the presumption of innocence, and we also have sexual abuse allegations that have been weaponized for political or financial reasons many times in our past. I saw this when I ran Justice Kavanaugh's Supreme Court hearing as the chief counsel for nominations, when 6 bullshit allegations were brought against Justice Kavanaugh.
Yep.
So I am very leery about these allegations, particularly when you have these shady ass parents who look like they have a financial motive. It looks like it was a shakedown here, that they, what Dave just said, when they said if they continue this contract, these allegations go away. If you're a parent, your kids are sexually abused, you don't give a damn about some contract. You want to make sure that someone who's sexually abusing the kids are arrested and held accountable.
Well, they're saying they didn't know at the time that the kids were employed by the show. That the parents did not know. The kids went to they got examined by a doctor. The doctor saw evidence of grooming. The doctor called in to the police. The police interviewed the children. They denied it. You heard that. But then the parents put the children into therapy, and the therapist, a year later, now the other side says, it was right after Warner Brothers denied their claim. It did an independent investigation and said, guess what? You're not getting anything. You're not getting any money. But a year later, the boys said to the therapist that they were touched. The therapist, who would typically have an ethical obligation to mention if she thought the boys had been coached by the parents, did not say that. The prosecution was quick to point that out. The prosecutors would, too, have an obligation to say if they thought the boys were groomed by the parents, or were not groomed, manipulated by the parents into saying that they'd been touched when they hadn't been. And obviously the prosecution believes these boys. But yeah, it's the timing of it. It's not ideal. And Dave, the reality is, in a sexual abuse case like this involving children, they're very hard to make anyway. There's almost never a witness. There's not a witness here. Now the story has changed because the boys initially in the Warner Brothers investigation appear to have said that this happened when it was just Busfield in the room with them. But they pointed out, the defense did. I didn't hear the prosecution respond to this exactly. Yesterday, they pointed out, oh no, now it's, the room was filled. No, there were lots of people there, but he just managed to sort of sneak it in. But it's like the prosecutor claimed, we never said that nobody was in the room, but the defense said, yes, they did. And they read a transcript of the Warner Brothers investigation where they claimed initially that nobody else had been in the room. All these contradictions undermine their credibility.
Right. Witnesses are really powerful here. Normally it's a he said, they said, but here you've had the show's director of photography, a guy named Alan Caudillo, who testified that the children were never left alone with adults on the set. And he also said that it was the parents who frequently encouraged the children to hug the adults. So all of that is relevant.
And that the adults felt uncomfortable with it. Like Alan testified, I didn't appreciate that. I didn't want some guy sending his 7-year-old over to hug me when clearly the kid didn't want to do it.
Right.
But again, that kind of suggests, what was this father up to? Was he trying to get like some sort of lay the foundation for a claim that like people on this set were inappropriate?
Right.
Keep going, Dave.
Well, that's why these cases are so hard. You're dealing with minors. You're dealing with repressed memories. And you're dealing with contradictory statements. So they're naturally tough to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And then you add the specter of the defendant's past, where it could go either way, right? Because he's been accused of misconduct with teenagers in the past. And yet, perhaps you could argue the parents knew about that and knew this was the weak spot for him. And when they said, apparently, according to a witness, that they were going to get him if their kids did not get renewed, and then they didn't get renewed, and perhaps that's the way they got him because they knew about his past allegations against him. So this is a convoluted mess right now. That's why the judge allowed the defendant to go home instead of staying in jail pre-trial, and that's why it's going to be hard to convict him beyond a reasonable doubt.
Mm-hmm. I have to say, I would have let him go home too. I just feel like now, having heard the defense, I'm not persuaded it didn't happen. I'm really not, because I don't impugn the children because of their parents' fraud. But there's enough defense evidence that this case, suggesting this case could go away or certainly result in a not guilty, that I don't think it's fair to hold him in jail pending trial. A new year means new financial goals, like making sure your savings are secure and diversified. Will this be the year you decide to talk to somebody from Birch Gold Group? You know, you've been thinking about it. They use an educated approach with a deep understanding of macroeconomics. There are forces pushing the dollar lower right now and gold higher, which is why they believe every American should own physical gold. So until January 30th, if you are a first-time gold buyer, Birch Gold is offering a rebate of up to $10,000 on qualifying purchases. To claim eligibility and start the process, just text MK to the number 989898. Birch Gold can help you roll an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, and you are still eligible for a rebate of up to $10,000. Consider making right now your first time to buy gold and take advantage of a rebate of up to $10,000 when you buy by January 30th. Text MK to the number 989898 and claim your eligibility today. Again, text MK to 989898 now. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.